My name is Gianni Russo, a.k.a. Carlo, the infamous son-in-law from The Godfather. I'm now known as the Hollywood Godfather, and this is my story.
Before all of the wins in my portfolio, I was a little boy diagnosed with polio. Experimenting with cures, I tried every one. Felt everything in my right, but my left was numb. Walking with a limp, like will I ever run? Once again, or is this it? Am I forever done? Living in the hospital was never fun. Some people were cool, but not everyone. You never know who you're lying in a room with. So I broke a broomstick in half and let it groove with the concrete in the bathroom floor. It had a new tip, stashed it behind the toilet in case I ever had to use it. Cause one day Dolores had a chat with me. Said she got...
Speak softly loud and hold me warm against your heart. I hear your words, the tender trembling moments. Welcome everybody. It's time for another episode of Hollywood Godfather. And tonight we have an extraordinary, interesting guest. I'm just meeting him. Pat knows a lot about him. So I'm going to have Pat, my compadre, my co-author, and we have another book coming out. We got so much going on. God bless. Pat
I'm tired just hearing all this stuff, man. I mean, we're working, trying to do different things in the industry. Anyway, that said, I want to start off by saying, before I introduce our guest, one thing I've discovered about Gianni and myself, we are organized crime snobs. Did you know that, Gianni?
I didn't know that, no.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why. Because we've been concentrating for the last 4 years of this podcast, almost 4 years, about organized crime in America in big cities. There are other areas in this wonderful country of ours where organized crime proliferates that I was totally unaware of. I met our guest, Jake Mulliken, actor, journalist, film producer, and he gets down and dirty when he goes after subjects to do a documentary on. He goes right to the source, and for the first half of the show, we're going to hear some interesting stuff about a part of this country that you would never think had the crime problem that they do. So, without further delay, let me introduce our guest, Jake Mulliken.
Thank you guys for having me on.
No,
Patrick,
Jake,
it's good to see you again, man.
Yeah, Jake and I have a habit of doing this. I have friends that I've never met in person.
Yeah, we've known each other about, what, 12 years almost now?
Something like that.
Yeah.
First time I'm actually seeing the guy, other than in film. He's been in a few movies that we'll talk about later. But, yeah, we've been talking for years, and we haven't met in person. He's going to come to Pittsburgh shortly, and we will get together. But anyway.
Why?
Yeah.
Why does he go to Pittsburgh?
Hey, man, that's the greatest city in the world, Pittsburgh.
I think so. Now, anyway.
I love it, man.
After looking at what New York has turned into, I well agree with you. But anyway, yeah, Gianni and I worked together for years, and I never met the guy until our book was actually out.
Is that why?
Yeah. Anyway, Jake, tell us something about who you are and what your background is before we get down and dirty here.
Yeah, I've been in the film industry for 16 years, either acting, producing, directing. I was a special ed teacher for 12 years, primarily working with students with autism or language-based learning disabilities. Actually, my master's thesis is doing film programs for students that are on the spectrum and students with language-based disabilities to help them meet their social, academic, and all the kind of goals they're going for. So yeah, film's eating it, living it, breathing it for my entire adult life, man.
Well, I commend you on that because I myself, one of my hobbies came to be, because I made a novena when I had polio in 49, if I ever got out of the hospital, that I'd give back to children. And I'm blessed because I built 3 homes for Down's children.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which automatically brought me autism and all the other elements.
Oh, yeah.
But as you would know. But
they're amazing people, man. They really are.
Oh, they are.
It was a fun time.
I adopted
Well-
7 of them.
Really?
Well, we had to because of the fact I found something interesting that you probably know this. The Jewish faith really don't want children who aren't perfect. I hate to say that. And they would give them up to Catholic charity. And my oldest sister and I, in the 60s and 70s, started adopting them that early on.
Really?
Yeah. But I hope that's changed now, but I don't think it
Well,
has.
I would hope so. I would think so. Anyway, Jake, like I started off the program a little tongue in cheek about Johnny and my experience with organized crime. I was totally unfamiliar with some of the stuff you told me over the years, and let's talk about the bucolic, calm South.
So, this project I'm working on now, and it's really interesting because there's not a whole lot on this era. It primarily was the decade, early 50s into the early 60s, and then some into the 70s. And, a buddy of mine, Chris Webster, he's actually the daytime bartender at the joint I hang out here in Bowling Green. He was telling me his granddad was telling him all these stories about when Bowling Green was referred to as Little Chicago. And he's like, man, that should be your next doc. I was like, get out of here. Yeah, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Yeah, we're between Nashville and Louisville. So we're about an hour from Nashville, Tennessee, about an hour and a half from Louisville, where home of the Kentucky Derby, and Bowling Green's home of the Corvette. And I grew up here and couldn't wait to get the hell out of here. And so my buddy was like, you should do a doc about Bowling Green. I was like, there's no fucking way I'm doing a documentary about this boring town. Nothing great ever happened here, yada, yada, yada. Well, then after saying that, it got stuck in my craw for like 4 months. And I woke up one morning and just started researching it. I had granddad at the doctor's, and I was like, man, they were blowing people up left and right in this place for like a decade.
Were they under the umbrella of Chicago?
That's one of the interesting things. So with my partner, actually, who just came on today, his name's Gary West. I'm going to kind of plug his book, if I may.
Please.
He just wrote this book, Murder on Youngers Creek Road, about a murder that happened in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And there was definitely influence here with the mob. I think they were calling the real name Little Chicago actually became kind of a tongue-in-cheek nickname for that decade, just because of the level of crime and murder and all of it. Which again, you drive around Bowling Green now, you wouldn't believe it. It's a small, quiet, university town. But in this decade, Bowling Green was the only wet city in Warren County, and so everybody. We were the hub.
Jake, explain what that is. What you meant, wet.
Wet. Oh, so we still have counties and cities here in Kentucky, and there are places throughout the South where they don't sell booze in any shape or form. You can't get it at restaurants. You can't get it at liquor stores. So that leaves you to have to go to.
It sounds like Salt Lake City.
It's Bible Belt, baby.
Oh, okay, there you go. That's why. I mean,
yeah.
What we try to do, Pat and I, because we are more worldly, I guess, than some of our listeners. We don't take it for granted. So we may ask you every once in a while to identify what wet is, because
Yeah.
we don't want people to think you're talking about people walking around without Pampers on or something.
Well, there's a little bit of that too. But these guys, they really took advantage of it. It kind of kicked off like organized crime in most places with the Volstead Act, and Prohibition. Well, Bowling Green wouldn't become wet until I think it was the early 60s. I'm just beginning to really get into all this. But it was notorious for prostitution, gambling. It was kind of blown my mind. And it makes sense because it's just cash money. But there was a lot of murders surrounding pinball machines, on top of, like slot machines and stuff they'd have in some of the more underground casinos. So it's just this really bizarre decade. During that time, Bowling Green, it was only like 45,000 residents at that time. You got to think, even with that, I think there were less than 30 cops. The annual homicide rate in Bowling Green was 7 times that of the national average. going through that decade.
And what's their average income, just so we can understand?
Bowling Green's a really solid, higher, kind of middle-class city. So I'd say average income
good.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, average income. There's a lot of factory work, a lot of rural areas, obviously, Kentucky farming. And it's a university town, a lot of healthcare jobs, service industry. At one point, we had more restaurants per capita than any city in the world.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre little place. It really is.
Jake, the era that we're talking about was the income per capita what it is now? Everybody rolling in money, or what are we talking about here?
Bowling Green's always been one of those really weird cities that's kind of, even when there was like the Great Recession and all that, it's kind of in this great economic bubble. People here can usually stay in stride. I think the big issue at that time really was that even, with the component, and it's a very religious-y town, less more now, I think, than what it used to be, but big Baptist city. I think then it was just the booze, it was the gambling, the booze, just all of it. And they were really going crazy. There's this, and I still need to read this biography, but there was a really famous brothel here called Pauline's that was like.
I knew her.
I was going to say, I was like, if anybody heard about it. But yeah.
Couldn't surprise me.
So, yeah, and it really is, it all really just centered around the bootlegging and the gambling. During this time, too, Bowling Green was HQ for, at the time, the largest car theft ring in the history of the U.S. at that point.
Wow.
And it went from like Bama, Tennessee. Yeah, and I grew up here and had no idea any of this shit happened.
So we aren't talking about, when everybody thinks of organized crime, they think of gangs. The biggest gang is the most powerful kid on the block, so to speak. But after I spoke to you, that's not what we're talking about here.
No, and there are definitely names that come up as like as kind of the major movers and shakers, but all pretty local guys. With Bowling Green, even in Warren County, when Bowling Green decided to bring booze back, they're selling to cities that are 5-6 minutes up the road.
That are dry.
That are dry. Yeah. And other counties that are dry. And so, it was just big money. And again,
so they had it all just locked into a very consolidated area.
Yeah, very much so. Well, and there were limited number of liquor licenses at the time. So you had guys that were more in with local and state politicians that were getting all these liquor licenses and, just handing out marked up hooch out of their bars and their storage areas.
We're not talking about gangs. We're talking about families.
Yeah.
And they're actually killing each other over territory for pinball?
Oh, there's guys that were dying because of pinball machines. They're obviously the slot machines, but over the booze. One of the in Gary's book here, the Murder on Youngers Creek Road, he went through this guy and interviewed 125, 126 people for this book. Some of them, the guys that were the hit for hire guys using the dynamite to blow people up. And in this one, this was a murder for hire. The guys that did it were from Bowling Green. They were trying to kill this guy by the Dusty Rhodes, not the baseball player or the wrestler. It's just, I guess at that time, anybody with that name just got to be, with Rhodes, got to be Dusty, These guys accidentally blew up his wife with a set charge in the barn of their house. And no one really got, aside from one of the guys that set the explosives, no one really got into any trouble for it. One guy named Jim Johnson, and I'll say the evil Jim Johnson, because there's, ironically enough, a really great Jim Johnson, who's a car dealer owner here at Bowling Green. But this other guy, he and a buddy went in to buy this Dusty Rhodes auto dealership. And it was right when the Vietnam War was ending, because Fort Knox is right by Elizabethtown. So they weren't getting the influx of soldiers buying cars, and E-Town, which is about an hour north of Bowling Green, they were going through a pretty solid economic downturn. And these guys plotted using known hit guys here in Bowling Green to kill this dude, to try to get the insurance money he had on the company. Just
So
wild shit.
So the hit guys were also local.
Yeah, they're from Bowling Green.
Everybody knew who they were.
Yeah. Yeah, this one, I'll tell you an interesting story. There was a detective by the last name of, I've actually got his name here. And this is bizarre because I was talking to my granddad. I take care of granddad here in Bowling Green. And by the church I grew up in, Glendale Baptist Church, there was this lot where you could just see the foundation. This cop was about, Moody, he was about to really put a clamp down on the guys doing the car theft ring. And they blew his house up. It was right next to the church. The guy that blew that guy's house up was a congregant of my grandparents' church.
Now,
as was the cop's wife.
That was the cop?
It was a cop's house. They were blowing up cops' houses here.
Jesus.
Yeah, man. It's a really bizarre story and not a lot on it. So I'm really lucky that Gary's on because he's done all this tremendous legwork, ATF agents. It was some federal issues. It was getting written about all over the U.S. Just how kind of wild.
What about law enforcement? What did they do about all this?
There were a lot of cops that were dirty that were found to be involved in it. Everything from sheriffs to police chiefs to detectives. I mean, and again, this era there weren't a lot of cops. I mean, you're looking at upward of like half these guys were on the take, and the mentality for the ones not on the take were like, well, we'll leave it alone. The bad guys will just take themselves out, which never really works. Especially when there's that much money.
It sounds very unorganized to me. It doesn't sound like organized crime. Hello.
Yeah, it is. It's
haphazard wildness.
That's really what it was, Johnny. It was, and the more like reading his book, because again, I'm from here. It's like nothing fun's ever happened here. I mean, shit, even the name is boring. It's named after the old like Victorian bowling on the green. That's what the city's named after, like the most white bread dial tone city you could imagine. But then there's this whole era where it's like the Wild West. It's been a really interesting thing to get into.
What about the local politicians? I'm bringing this up because there was a pretty famous movie in the 50s called Phoenix City.
Okay,
it was Phoenix City, Alabama, I believe. And what you're describing, this is a true story. It's exactly what you're describing. No or limited law enforcement, corrupt politicians, no law and order whatsoever. The bad guys, and they weren't organized. Like Gianni says, this is disorganized crime. They each decided, all these different families and individuals decided they were going to take over Phoenix City. And finally, one incorruptible federal prosecutor came down there and actually had to get the military down there to retake the city from the bad guys. So my question is,
when was this, Pat?
This was it. Well, this started after World War II because everybody had money after World War II, and Phoenix City became so corrupt that there was literally no law and order, no honest politicians. Everybody was on the take. The homicide rate, and that's not too far from you. I mean, it's in a neighboring state. But when you talk about 7 times the homicide rate, and this is a rate per 100,000. I mean, you look at New York City in the mid-1980s, just the city, there were 2,400 homicides. So, but you're dealing with a population of 8 million people. 7 times, whatever your rate was down there, everybody knew somebody who got whacked.
Well, and that's and that's part of the South too. I mean, you take a shit, everybody knows what color it is, right? I mean, that's just everybody knows everybody. You know what I'm saying?
But the bottom line is what I'm hearing too, though. When you start using dynamite to get rid of people, there's very little evidence left.
Yeah, well, and that's it. And, I mean, the big thing was, like, here, I've got a stat for you, right? So Bowling Green became wet again in 1957, right? In the months following that vote to bring booze back to Bowling Green, they had 200 arrests for bootlegging. We're not even talking in the first year. We're talking like 2-3 months in. They're already arresting like hundreds of guys. And a lot of the violence were these cats that owned these liquor distributors and whatnot in turf wars with each other.
But
it's like Budweiser fighting Coors with these guys.
But they were 15, 17 years behind prohibition being legal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like different. It's like you're walking into a time warp.
I know.
Well, that's
it's
Kentucky,
wild to
man.
follow this.
Well, and
Yeah.
this is fairly recent history. So all this infighting between families, somebody, I would think, has to come out ahead here.
You know, that's so here's where it kind of gets really interesting. And Gary and I, Gary West and I were kind of talking about it. But the more I get in, you don't even, there's no history on it. It's not in museums. So there's the city's just kind of, there's actually a creek that used to go through town. I think it was called Whiskey Run. Oh, I got it here. Yeah, Whiskey Run.
Yeah.
It's completely buried now. It's
What do
like
you
gone.
They made a road
Exactly.
out of it.
They got it. Yeah. They just buried
What-
the damn thing under hills. They use it for like flood runoff. You can't even see it.
What they do? Bulldoze the town?
They bulldozed the history. I mean,
Wow.
they buried that shit as deep as they could.
They said,
There's not a lot of pictographic evidence.
Gianni, what do you think that we missed out on a lot growing up where we did?
Not me. No, I'm very
I mean,
happy
you know-
where I am.
Jake, it sounds. Gianni and I grew up in the same area, a little Italy downtown, the Lower East Side. But what it sounds like to me is that there was no rules among. I use the term
Thieves.
bad guys.
Yeah.
I could say we. There was rules where we lived. There was things you couldn't do. And even though they were cutting each other's throats and they were killing each other, you never committed a crime in a certain area. You never bothered anybody's family, and you certainly never blew up anybody's house.
Oh no.
Well, this is just rednecks with dynamite and a lot of
Yeah.
hooch, man.
Well, that true, and they didn't have to aim.
That's it. Yeah. And I mean, these guys, it's real interesting because, I mean, you think, okay, shootout, stuff like that. There was one, and it's in the book here, a guy that owned like a local kind of construction joint made a snide comment to this guy who was a known, criminal and all that. And they just built a bomb and put it under his trailer, blew the damn thing up. And we're talking 31W bypass, which was the major highway in that era, going, it went from Kentucky all the way down to Florida. And now we've got I-65 and Bluegrass Parkway, some major highways going through. But this is an era where there really wasn't any.
And now you're talking about the
just
50s and 60s, right?
Yeah.
And no big convictions on any of this stuff?
I mean, there were guys that definitely got pinched. The guy that had a hand in blowing up Miss Rhodes' house, and then Gary's book here, he's getting out. Actually, he just got out. I think 2 years early for health. He was supposed to get out in 24, but he just got out. But yeah, some of these guys, there were guys that killed themselves when they were up to, be prosecuted. And there were some guys that just never had any, never got the book thrown at them, nothing, not so much as a parking ticket.
Well, how about after they blew up the cop's house? That should have been a wake-up call for law enforcement.
Hello,
Investigation ended.
No arrests.
No arrest. Now, as time went on, they got more cops, and a lot of this stuff turned federal. You had ATF come in, obviously, because of the explosions. You had FBI. But, I mean, they had to really lean on, from what I'm seeing so far, and again, I'm just barely cracking this thing open because it's just so bizarre. You had a lot of guys get away with it. You had known, really well-known Southern families. One guy, they blew up part of one of his beer distributors where he was hiding pinball machines and stuff. And the cops came and saw all these pinball machines. He's like, "Oh, they must have put them in there. I had no idea they were there." And that was it. That's all he had to say. It's like, those aren't my machines.
So how did this era come to a close?
As more and more cities started letting booze be sold and the police force really upped their game, it just kind of came to an end. I mean, really.
But
it almost ended as abruptly as it started.
Me being older than all of you guys, I know when Prohibition ended. I know who created and made most money. One of the guys that raised me, basically, Frank Costello, and him and Joe Kennedy We're talking about the 30s and 40s. You're talking about the 50s and 60s.
That's Kentucky. Our state motto should be a day late and a dollar short. We're just about as back in time as you can get. As soon as you cross the line into Kentucky, it's like you go back 20, 30 years.
Wow.
Are there still dry counties in Kentucky?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
this
the
college
Baptist,
I was
that's
supposed
why.
It,
The religion, that's why.
Oh, absolutely it is. Well, that's why Kentucky, I think this is still the case, but, Kentucky for a long time, and I think it is still the case, their number one export was weed.
Yep.
Kentucky will absolutely be the last state to ever legalize it. We don't even have medical yet. They get shut down every year. And a lot of that has to do with because the whiskey lobby is so strong that they're worried, that if pot's legal, it's going to cut into whiskey. And it'll always be that way here. It really is like sometimes 1960s politics here in 2022.
And how about the religious aspect of it? Is it praise the Lord and pass the dynamite, that kind of thing? I mean, were these people still religious and doing this?
Yeah, the one guy,
God,
I was telling you about, he went to church with my grandparents. They knew the guy that blew up the detective's house. The guy went to church, sat, with the detective's wife, and still blew up the damn house. Was at church every Sunday, donated, all that.
Well, I have to test it out too, because Pat knows. I knew 3 popes, and I still had my life. And they asked me a couple of times after I got involved in 2 or 3 homicides, and how to justify it. And I said I was doing the Lord's work, and they let it go.
There you go.
Thinning the herd, so to speak.
I got to get me some Catholicism, man. Baptists aren't that forgiving.
Man. Gianni, time to make some money.
All right, we'll be right back. Excuse us, Jake. We got to make a few dollars.
Absolutely.
Nobody go away. I know where you live, and so does Pat.
Yes.
We'll be right back. I'm really excited to announce Pala Casino Spa and Resorts in California. The phone number for reservations is 760-510-5100. I'll be there one night, October 1st, a Saturday night. Come and catch the show. It's an evening you can't refuse, and I guarantee you, when you leave, you will be amazed at what you're going to see. Remember, Pala Casino and Spa Resorts, 760-510-5100, October 1st.
My way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gianni Russo.
Thank you so much.
We're back. Jake,
Okay,
your story is fascinating.
Yeah, we've been talking to Jake Mulliken. I mean, I've known Jake for 12 years. We often talk about criminal things and different aspects of crime. But Jake has a very colorful career in journalism, and he's a well-respected documentarian. And he started out as an actor, and this is something I didn't fully understand until we spoke recently. So to shift away from crime, because crime petered out, so to speak, tell us about yourself and what pictures you were in and TV series and how you got involved in this. You come from a small town. I mean, there are people that Gianni and I know, and a lot of people know, that work all their lives just to find an agent. You were in some major motion pictures here.
I got really lucky, man. I was shooting a documentary with a friend of mine, and we stopped in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I had the best damn breakfast I've ever had in my life. And I'm at this place called The Pantry on Cerrillos Road, one of the main drags. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna move to Santa Fe. So I came back
Just
to
for
Bowling
breakfast?
Green. That was a damn good breakfast, Gianni. I'm telling you, man.
That must have been some eggs and sausage, man.
Oh, I'm telling you, Durango omelet with green chili sauce and red chili potatoes and biscuits and gravy. It's all you need.
Okay.
I can tell
All
you
you
impressed.
need.
So where did you move to?
So I moved to Santa Fe. I just figured, the idea initially was, I think it'll be easier to kind of make a name for myself in acting. I wanted to write. That was the whole goal. But acting and film seemed more, I guess, logical and attainable than, breaking through and being a writer. And I was not totally aware of it at the time, but New Mexico was one of the first states to really go heavy into the statewide film incentives, where they offer a lot of tax cuts for films that come in and shoot. And I started working at the Santa Fe Playhouse. I had actually just got done with doing Glengarry Glen Ross, directed by a good friend of mine, Liam Lockhart, there at the Playhouse. Go ahead.
When you and I were discussing this, Glengarry Glen Ross, Johnny, if you're not familiar with it.
I'm so familiar with it. I thought he was in the movie. He was in a play locally.
Yeah, it was written by David Mamet. Yeah. Oh, no, I wish I'd have been in the movie, though, man.
Let's put it in its perspective. He's in a play.
Well, it was a play before it was a movie. And I tell you, David Mamet is known for his dialogue. Everything is dialogue in that. And you have to really know what you're doing to hold your own. You have to get a part in that picture. As the janitor, probably had about 3 pages of dialogue.
Well, see, that was my second play ever. My resume was total bullshit, right? So, I mean, it was really just plays I'd read, and I'd pick the smallest character. Like, Death of the Salesman, I wasn't saying Biff or Happy, or saying Willie Loman at the age of 21. So I got lucky enough to get cast, and I got an agent, and
what part did you play?
Do what?
What part did you play? I saw the movie many times.
Oh, I played the Ricky Roma part, man. Al Pacino's part.
Wow.
The slick salesman. Yeah, it was great. And it was horrifying because it was my second play ever. And, it starts off with like a 12-page monologue.
Yeah, this is David Mamet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's one of those moments where it's like, I might want to reevaluate what I've chosen to do.
You must have great memory, though.
Oh, yeah. I can memorize a play when I sit down 2 or 3 days, and then it's there.
That's great.
Roll in, yeah. It's a really good
That's
skill.
That's the one thing that was my benefit as a new actor also. I retain. And I used to give Coppola pages. Johnny, what page is that on? I used to tell him, get him crazy. But
yeah.
Wow.
I could do that too. It's just I read it and it sticks there. It's
my first exposure to Jake here was in the first season of Breaking Bad. I said, this guy looks awfully familiar. And how did you wind up in Breaking Bad?
So I had this great agent, Vince Poole. He's since passed away, and he was great. Real kind of bulldog looking guy, always chewing a stug. Just kind of what you imagine an agent should be like. The guy always on the phone yelling, getting you the work. Vince was awesome. I was driving to Albuquerque, which is about an hour from Santa Fe, going down.
I hope they have good breakfast there too.
Do what?
They have good breakfast there too?
Oh, absolutely. The Frontier over by campus. Best breakfast burrito you'll ever have, man.
There you go.
Yeah. And I was driving this green Cadillac DeVille that my great-grandparents had given me when I drove out there. They were like, well, you should look good pulling up in this. Well, the fucking thing broke down in the middle of the desert on I-25 about 3 miles from the audition. And so I call my agent. I'm like, hey, man, the green meanie done died. And it was for this part I got in Breaking Bad. And he's like, I'll tell him you're not coming. I was like, oh, no, I'll make it. So I take my dress shirt off, tie it around the waist, and just start sprinting across the highway to go onto the, on ramp to get to this audition. I'm carrying my headshots. As soon as I get up the ramp, the semi drives by, pulls the headshots out of my hand, runs my face over. So there's just big tire tracks of my professional headshots,
Oh, wow.
And I'm not a runner. I'm a pack-a-day smoker. I'll run to a bar, but I'm not trying to sprint. I'm not going to be winning any medals. But I got there, drenched in sweat, went in, memorized the lines. The director, I think it was Terry Gilliam, maybe? No, I can't remember. Anyway, I walk in, and the guy's like, are you the one? Everybody was talking about me running there. And he's like, are you the guy that ran here? I'm in a Yoo-Hoo T-shirt. Sweat coming out of places I didn't know you could sweat. And I was like, no, I just get really nervous performing in front of people. and yeah, that's how I got the part. It was it was great, And
well, I know Breaking Bad. I never watched it, but so
I never did either.
You had a big part in that?
No, it was just a day player part. Yeah, it was actually interesting because at the time they were going to cancel the show. So it was episode 7 of the first season. my character's name was Prospective House Buyer Number One. I got called a bitch on national television, which is huge, a huge laugh here at home. But yeah, it was great. I got to be in that scene with Aaron Paul and really see for the first time like how sets on that scale look, and really understand, the whole hurry up and wait that comes with film, because it takes forever to do anything.
Talking about a guy that did 46 of them.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You get in a lot of naps and reading, man.
That's right, man. That's how
So
I
what
built
did
up
that
my
lead to?
business.
One thing led to another. I was in I was up for a co-starring part in a Lifetime movie called Sex and Lies in Sin City about the murder of Ted Binion. And they said I looked too mean to be the journalist, which is funny because I am a journalist.
You're talking
so
about
they made me a cop.
You're talking about a friend of mine, Ted Binion.
Really?
Oh yeah, mine. Oh, you know his father, Benny Binion. Forget about it. The whole group.
I got the good fortune after I did that part. I was one of the first cops on the scene with the body. And, it had Matthew Modine in it that played Teddy
That
Binion.
was a big movie. I know it well.
Yeah.
Nobody had more silver dollars buried in the world than him.
It's a crazy story, man. When I was out in Vegas, this is way back when, but when I was moving out to Los Angeles, a buddy of mine, real estate guy that was out in Vegas, took me to Ted Binion's house. And that place is wired like Fort Knox, man. The screen room and all the mounds had the flags where people were like going over to try to find his treasure and everything. It's a really bizarre story.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, that to me, I mean, they're lucky the father wasn't alive. The father used to shoot people in the street down in Old Vegas on Frontier Street. They were nuts when they were organizing originally. That's right after the Second World War, and then they built the dam, and that's where all these guys were getting paid and losing all their money to them. And they were actually afraid of the mob coming there. So that's when they gave the permission for them to build out in the valley, which was Flamingo Road. And now that's bigger than downtown. It was crazy what was going on.
If people don't know the story or haven't seen the movie, the story's been told many times. Benny Binion dies, and his son took over the empire. Really couldn't handle it. The guy liked his drugs. He liked his women. He liked everything. He buried. Well, you tell the story, Jake.
And Gianni, you're going to have to fill in a lot because I don't know a ton about it. But yeah, he was big if memory serves. He's like big into heroin. I think that's what they used to finally. Yeah,
that's what, and a lot of the guys used that to get to him. And the one girl, I forgot the last girl, the one that was living with him, she was the one that gave him up. She had like $1 million in silver dollars herself. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, and the story always was that he just had it because they got caught trying to dig up one of the things, right? I mean, they were out in the middle of the desert, with like a bulldozer and all that shit.
In the middle of the night with lights on, like nobody's going to see them.
You don't even have to be an intuitive cop. This cop drives past this searchlights are on. They got bulldozers out there, the middle of the desert. So the cop is just naturally curious. What are they building another hotel here in the middle of nowhere? He goes up to the this was the girlfriend's boyfriend, and they had already whacked the son, and now they're looking for the gold. But this wasn't, somebody went out there with a shovel. He had, like an acre of silver buried.
Right.
So they go out there with a bulldozer. The cop goes up to him and says, excuse me, but what are you guys doing here? We said they were digging for water. So the cop, not being brain damaged, figured he's got something here. Anyway, they were digging up Junior's silver rather.
Right.
Well, I know they did a lot of shows where they would when I got to see his house, they had it all staked off because A&E I think did something where it was that like mystery search for silver kind of thing.
Yeah. Where is it all? So
you transitioned. I mean, you've had quite a career here, and you're only 24 years old. I tell you, you look good. Anyway, you transitioned from what we just spoke about, a very prolific writer, a good reputation in business. Now you want to be a producer.
Yeah, it was after. I'll tell you what the shift was. I was in Pittsburgh and I had gotten cast because I'd moved to Pittsburgh after teaching a few years, teaching film in Oakland, California. I got cast in this movie that was supposed to be a horror flick, right? And I got cast as this British guy, and he was a part of a 2-man team. And I think I got the part because I may or may not have gotten into a bit of an altercation after a Steelers game and just had this great shiner. And so I walk into this audition for this movie to do the British accent, and I get it. Well, about 45 days into a movie that never got finished, it dawned on us that the horror element of this that the director had in the movie, they were giant zebra mussels that had infested the rivers of Pittsburgh. So your monster was a sedentary creature. And so the only time people were getting hurt is like hitting one of these damn things like a jet ski or something, right? It was just, movie never got done.
I don't know how it got started.
Yeah.
She had money and spend it herself.
That's what it was.
War
okay,
and peace. Yeah. And so, but after that, I was like, I'm tired of being in other people's stuff. I want to give it a go. So I did my first flick, Meltdown. It just got re-released about a year and a half ago, Berserkers. Just total 80s style schlock zombie flick. And that was my first one. And it's just a lot of fun doing your own, and I think, especially now on the independent side, at the accessibility of technology and how many platforms.
Oh my God, yeah.
You can do it and do it your own way.
No, a young producer today, it's a young producer's dream because there's so many outlets.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can self-publish if you want, self-distribute. There's there's so many film festivals. There's a lot of way to get all these places are starving for content,
and they don't care. That's the whole thing. They take,
absolutely.
A, B, C, D films. They don't care as long as it's they have content and people go on their network and they say, "Well, they have 4,000 horror films on this," and they got it. Oh yeah, you're done.
It's like Tubi, they're like the lead for independent horror. But they really are, man. Mine's on there. But so I'd done that prior to doing it. I had shot interviews for actually the project that I'm doing now. It's coming out about Hunter S. Thompson, the guy that wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hell's Angels, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, 1972, Nixon McGovern. He's described as the least factual and most accurate political journalist ever.
And you're doing his life story now?
Yeah, I just finished a documentary. We're actually doing a really cool thing in LA at the Artistry. It's this it's a weed dispensary / art gallery in West Hollywood, this place.
Only in Hollywood, man.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. But yeah, I've been working on that doc for about 10 years. And, it's not a traditional cut. The doc's called Doomed, Hunter S. Thompson's American Dream. And, with a guy like that, it was so much larger than life. A lot of the focus has been on kind of that persona, the drug-crazed wild man, that gonzo Raoul Duke. And my doc looks at his relevance. I mean, the guy, who can walk around and say, hey, I created my own form of journalism. I mean, the guy was a prolific writer. He changed the face of journalism. He was a great political analyst, sports writer, social activist. I mean, just one of those iconic characters, especially in the American literary canon.
Didn't Johnny Depp play in a feature film?
He's played him twice. He played him in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and then in the film adaptation of Hunter's only fiction novel, Rum Diary.
Wow.
Yeah, and then Bill Murray played him in 80.
For him and you guys, just for you to boast about that.
Yeah, he's, it's been a lot of fun, and the way I've cut the doc, we're doing something new. Actually, Johnny, speaking to what we were talking about earlier, especially if you're an independent guy, how the world's kind of your oyster. I'm working with this great couple, Robert and Angela. They're with Why Not Coco in LA. We're using the whole NFT thing and seeing how it plays in film. There's kind of a movement toward that. I know Kevin Smith and Spike Lee have said they're going to do, their next releases as NFTs. So
explain to some of our listeners who don't know what an NFT is.
So the NFTs, and I want to preface this before getting involved in all this, anything Bitcoin, any of that, it's like, if I can't touch it, it's not money. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. Well, you're right.
yeah. I mean, it's like, so you're telling me I have it, but I can't touch it, you know?
Right.
But NFTs take that point, and it's like artwork is stocks. It's non-fungible tokens. And so you've seen them, like Madonna's done them. Johnny Depp actually released some a few weeks ago. People are doing these digital art pieces and selling them. And then, you know, when somebody buys them, that person could turn around and keep upping the price and reselling it, where it works like stocks, but it's very art centric.
It's called pyramiding.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, man. That's exactly what the thing is. And
it's a new version of it.
That's right. It's just a lot more flashy and colorful and digital, you know? Yeah. And so what we did is I did 10 pieces of original artwork that, in lieu of, like, you know, old school gallery having paintings on canvas, we're going to have each piece on a 60-inch flat screen in the second story of, you know, artistry there. We're doing it on September 24th. We're going to have that set up. And then the rest of the event is set up like a museum exhibit. We've got in the middle like a black box where people can go and sit in there. And, you know, we'll all be stoned, too, because it's in the smoking lounge of this place. That's why I wanted to do it there. It's like, hey, what better way to keep them at a show, right? Boom. You can smoke up in the lounge. Yeah. I don't know about free.
So just so our listeners totally understand it, so you basically have 10 clips.
Yeah, so that's what we did. Instead of doing the traditional just like static image, we've kind of designed these pieces, and all relate to the work of Dr. Thompson and themes that he wrote about, like Death
so
of the
it's
American
in that
Dream.
vein.
Huh?
It's in his vein of life.
Yeah, it's in his vein, and it's based off themes that are in the documentary as well. So, for instance, there, you know, where his gonzo style of journalism was created was in the Kentucky. His article he wrote for Scanlon Monthly about the Kentucky Derby, and he and a British artist Ralph Steadman went to try to identify like the really horrible whiskey drunk rich Kentucky crowd at the Derby.
Oh wow!
And by the end of it, they'd gotten so fucked up over the weekend that Hunter just had a loose scribbling of like notes and started feeding those in to the Mojo Wire. And Scanlon's printed it and hailed it as this great achievement in journalism. You know, there's a great interview with Thompson where he's like, I thought it was a failure. I didn't think I was ever going to work again.
That's why
it's turned crazy. Into this. It's a great piece.
Now, does he still have a huge following? Is that's what you're basing all this on?
You know, yeah, he does. And part of the reason that I wanted to do my doc, we're both Kentuckians. He's from Louisville. He over the years, he's like a pop culture icon. You know, you'll see like the college kids with posters like Che Guevara and have no clue who Che Guevara is. It's just some cool shit they put on T-shirts. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, and that's how Hunter's legacy's gone a lot. It's like, it's that pop culture, anti-establishment kind of vibe. But the man was a brilliant writer. And so what I'm hoping to do with this doc and with this event, the way we're doing it, is people come in and can actually see his relevance and see how much shit he was actually writing about and was involved in. I mean, this guy was at, you know, the 68 Democratic National Convention with the police riots in Chicago. He was covering Nixon, and, you know, Nixon was his arch nemesis. He was there for the Kennedy assassination, both Robert and Jack. I mean,
it's so funny, you know, as you're talking, Jake, so was I.
Yeah.
Small world.
Pat wrote about it.
Yeah. I read the book.
Oh, okay, then you know.
You're the guy.
Yeah.
All right. I knew somebody read that book.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we've been blessed with that book, I tell you.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, I was telling Pat, it's amazing to know, like, from when it came out and when I read it to where it's taken you guys.
Oh,
it's been a really cool thing to watch.
Watch where we're going now, man. It's amazing. It's really
we're coming out with a Gianni Russo fiction series.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, the first book will be out around Christmas, and we hope to put out 1 or 2 a year. It's going to be a wild ride. In the opening page, sort of a disclaimer. Gianni writes, this is a work of fiction, except for the parts that are true.
It's new
It's up to
hook.
the reader to figure it out. And this way, we don't get sued. You can always fall back. That's fiction. We're doing,
Well, and it's funny you put it that way, because that was kind of Hunter's thing too, right? That Gonzo's style is putting himself in the middle of the story and then writing the journalistic bit about it. Right. And so it was always trying to figure out, did this shit actually happen, or is he making it up to try to prove a point? That was one of the things with it. So, that's the LA thing in a nutshell. We're doing these great, cool NFTs. They're on a website called OpenSea, just under Doomed, Hunter S. Thompson's American Dream, same as the doc. And then that night on the Doomed Doc Instagram page, the Doomed, Hunter S. Thompson's American Dream Instagram, I'm going to release the first episode of the doc. It's a 9-episode series. I did it short form. I'm kind of calling it a documentary you can walk away from.
So how many minutes is each form?
Each episode's about 9 minutes. Okay. And I'm just curious. And
that's about the attention span of somebody that's stoned.
That's about right, man. Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you, as somebody that was stoned cutting it, that's about when I got tired of cutting it.
That's wild, man.
So tell our listeners again when this is going to be, where it's going to be.
So the gallery show and museum exhibit will be held on September 24th, starting at 6 p.m. In Los Angeles at the Artistry in West Hollywood. For more, and people can keep up with us again on the Doomed, Hunter S. Thompson's American Dream Instagram page.
That's Doomed. That's Doomed. DOOMED. Doomed.
Yeah, Doomed. Yeah, one of Hunter's favorite words to use and describing, where things were headed. And then also that night, starting at 6 and for 24 hours, I'm going to release episode 1. And the hope is to find one platform that, like a Freebie or Tubi, just one to work with.
Yeah,
which is why I'm doing it this way, because it's like with the zombie flick, Berserkers, it's out there on like 50 different platforms. I don't even know what platforms the damn thing's on at this point, because there's just so many.
Well, you sent me a copy. I loved it, man. Very campy. Well, you're in it too.
Oh yeah, the zombie flick. Yeah. Oh yeah, 80s style all the way, man.
Yeah, really good. So tell me when you're gonna get here to Pittsburgh so we can get together finally.
I know, man. When hopefully all go well and we'll have a good home for Hunter, and I'm hoping for the Bowling Green doc. We're calling it Little Chicago. Figured why not? The media did the name for us. Roll with it. Man, I'd like to try to come out sometime in the fall and catch a Steelers game. I'm curious about how young Lord from Pitt's going to do this season.
All right, well, you got my number, pal. Just give me a call, and we want to thank you. This has been one interesting show.
Yeah, I mean it's really.
We've been around over 4 years, and truthfully, we've never had anybody like you on the show.
Which is great. It's good. I mean, it's good variety for us. So thank you.
It's a good thing.
We appreciate it.
I had a blast. This is my first podcast. What better way to start it than with you guys, right?
There you go, man. All right.
There you go. You're going to make us famous. Well,
Jake, thank you so much, man. I really
thank you guys.
It, I'm going to try to come out and surprise you in September. I'm around there then.
Hey, I'd love it, man.
All right, great.
That'd be great.
Jake, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right, please.
Okay.
We're going to take a commercial break. We're coming back. Today's show is being sponsored by Corleone Fine Italian Food Products. This sponsor really means a lot to me. Corleone Fine Italian has taken the heart and soul of the Godfather films and created a line of food products that include pasta sauce, balsamic vinegar from Modena, Italy, Genco extra virgin olive oil from Sicily. They created delicious pasta sauces, marinade, tomato basil, arrabbiato, and my favorite, Clemenza's meat sauce. You will be amazed. You will think your grandmother made the sauce herself. CorleoneFineItalian.com. That's CorleoneFineItalian.com. Oh, we're back from the commercial, and we'll talk to you next week. We want to say thank you. Don't forget to tell your friends. We need the cards and the letters. We're going to get to a mailbag show soon. We need more content and more ideas for more shows. Pat, thank you for a great show again tonight. And,
Okay, thank you, my friend. We've had a good one.
Always, please.
Okay, I'll be in touch. Have a
Please.
good night, Gianni.
All right, good night. You too.
If you're feeling sad and lonely, there's a service I could render. I'm the one who loves you only. I could be so warm, so tender. Call me. Don't be afraid, you can call me. Maybe it's late, but just call me. Tell me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hollywood Godfather podcast. You can contact Gianni Russo, Patrick Picciarelli, or myself, Megan Horan, with your questions and comments through the contact section of our website, HollywoodGodfatherPodcast.com, which is where you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You can also call and leave us a message at 646-776-3038. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Hollywood Godfather and on Facebook, as well as leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd like to know what you like about what we're doing, what you'd like to hear in the future, and anything else you might suggest to improve our podcast. Most importantly, hit the subscribe button. We'll be back next week with stories of the mob and Hollywood, as well as answers to your messages.
Call me. Don't be afraid, you can call me. Maybe it's late, but just call me. Tell me and I'll be around. I'll be around. Give me a call.
When I was 17, it was a very good year. It was a very good year for small town girls and soft summer nights. We'd hide from the lights on the village green. When I was 17,
I did it my